Okay, what I'm going to show you today is kind of some tips and techniques on how to build a balsa wood glider. The first thing you want to do is when you get down to the cadet build area down in the Aero lab basement, and if you want to build down there, find a little spot on the bench, set yourself up. Or if you want to take the materials home, I suggest you take some wax paper with you. You can't take any of the tools with you, but this would be stuff you could easily get, or if you have a pocket knife, it would just work just as well. I recommend a metal ruler, maybe a T-square. I recommend super glue. You can use hot glue if you'd like. I wouldn't use like an Elmer's glue or a wood glue. Those are water-based, and they're not going to be as effective. This will be very effective. Anybody know what super glue is designed for? Treating wounds on battlefield. So it'll suture a wound pretty nicely. And what do you suppose it does to cadet fingers?
Sticks them together.
Right. So if you get stuck like this, don't try to pull them apart. It'll take skin. Just gently rub together, okay? Gently rub and it'll come apart. And after a few days it'll come off. All right. What you need to get your materials, if you go through the reading for the glider build, you will get a fuselage stick and a sheet of balsa wood. This is what you get to build your plane with. Okay? Now, to get your materials issued to you, what I recommend you do is on a piece of paper or 2 pieces of paper, you can build it to scale, is that you make a cut plan. Austin, tell me again. What's your little rule of thumb for cut plans?
Measure twice, cut once.
So measure twice, cut once. So if you take a, no kidding, sheet of balsa wood paper and you put it on a sheet of balsa wood and you put it on paper and trace that out, or at least the dimensions which you have in your write-up, you can come up with a cut plan. And your cut plan will essentially tell you how you're going to cut this thing. Everything has to come out of the one sheet of paper. Okay? So you're going to need wings, you're going to need a tail of some kind, and then you're going to need a rudder, perhaps, and maybe some scrap for emergency or some other things I'm going to show you here in a second. So with this, if you have a cut plan, at least you know coming in what you're going to do, and you're not going to be guessing. And you can measure all these ahead of time and figure out what you're going to do. So the other thing I want to show you is how do you make wing sweep? How do you make wing sweep and double length based on the amount of balsa you get? Well, imagine that I take if I know my angle of my wing sweep, and I know my cord at the tip, so my cord at the tip and my cord at the root, I can literally just take this. Everybody see where the wing is? This would be the left wing, and this is the right wing, and I flip this over and I flip it again. This is where it meets at the root, and this is the wing tip. And now I've built in some sweep on one sheet of paper, and I've effectively doubled the length of my wingspan. So you need to figure out how you're going to do that, and I'll show you here today. This is kind of what our finished product's going to look like. I feel like a cooking show, right? You always got to have something ready because they never put it in the oven and then take it out the next second. But this is kind of the road we're going to go down. I'm going to show you how to build a pretty simple wing like this, a fuselage, and then in this particular design, we built a channel. Everybody can see that channel with the scrap wood. Why do you suppose I built the channel in there?
You adjust the center of gravity.
I can adjust the center of gravity. I can also adjust the center of lift. I can move where my lift goes back and forth, my lift vector. Okay. I can also, if I was really aggressive, I can put a little bit of angle into these wings. Okay, I can put a little wedge down in there. I can put a little wedge down there. But if you do this method, you're going to have to be careful not to glue it down in there. So you're going to need some way to ensure that this channel is nice and tight. And then what you want to do are put tick marks here, because when this thing lands, those wings are going to move forward. So you probably want to take a rubber band like this and put your wings on. And you'll have to do a lot of test flying with this type of design. You have to do a lot of test flying in general. And you can kind of at least give it a little bit of tension and keep it fixed. And if you mark it each time you throw it, then if you have a good flight, you just remember that mark and you put it back on that mark, because this will move once it lands. You can take advantage of the tail. We can assume that the fuselage stick is fairly square, and I can mount the tail to the bottom and just mount the vertical stabilizer to the side and take advantage of as much surface area as possible. So if you try to mount it directly to the side of the stick, it's going to be tough because there's not as much glue surface. The other option you can do is do the rubber band method on the tail. And so what you can adjust is the angle of attack, or the tail incidence, for the amount of trim velocity you're trying to target. Okay? So what I would recommend there is you decide to fix one surface or the other. So fix the wings in one space, and then make the tail adjustable, or fix the tail and then make the wings adjustable. Because you're just going to have too many variables otherwise. You already have a variable in the CG by putting clay on the front. Okay? So we'll just set that here. So, your work area, what I would recommend is some sheets of wax paper. Make sure the waxy side is up. This is a nice little cutting mat that you'll have down in the lab. And then when you get handed your wood, you want to make sure it's not too terribly warped. Now these are not the most expensive sheets of balsa wood, but if you get a really warped sheet of wood, everybody see how that's warped? I would ask for another one, or at least ask for a few and pick the best one. Once you start cutting into it, it's not going to be as significant. This one's not as bad. This is the one I'm going to start to work with. This is the one I'm going to start to work with. And the same for the fuselage stick. If you look down the barrel of the stick and it's doing this, I wouldn't, you're already starting in a bad position. So don't feel like you have to accept it. I would send it back and ask for a new one. So check out the fuselage sticks beforehand. Now in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through a cut plan, but I will draw on here just to illustrate for you how I'm doing this. And of course my mat is not helping me out because it's not laying flat. But I recommend a metal ruler. Why? Because if you put the blade up against the metal ruler, it'll help guide it a little better than the wood. The blade will dig into the wood, or the wood ruler with the little metal edge. So what I recommend is use a metal ruler there and help line up your blade. Balsa wood, it's a very soft wood. It cuts very easy. So when you want to cut with the grain, be very gentle because it'll split if you go too aggressively. You want to score it. You want to score it gently. So cutting with the grain or cutting against the grain, I would recommend scoring it very gently. Just let that weight of the knife cut through it, and then eventually it'll break through. Okay? Don't try to snap it or push through on one initial stroke. All right? So a couple things you want to do when you get your wood. You want to make sure that it's square. So you can get a T-square down there, and this one's not perfectly square, so you can shave off that end there. Because what you're going to end up doing is if you use this to mount with or to glue it up, and if it's crooked to begin with, that's pretty square. If you want to do that and the edge isn't square to begin with, then you're going to have some issues. So check that out. Make sure that if you want to square it up, like this end here, I'd want to square it up. So what I'm going to do there is I'm going to take, I'm just going to take my T-square here, and I'm going to line this puppy up. Let me do it this way. And see how much I got to mess with. See, I just want to shave off a little bit. You guys feel free to stand if you want. And if you are on a table, you want to, because the T-square has a bit of an edge there, so it's not going to lay flat, so I'd hang it off the edge of the table there, and I want to shave this end off. So I'm just going to make my mark there and shave the end off. And I'm just going to let the weight of the blade just kind of take it through the wood there. And you want to kind of push it against the metal ruler and make sure that you don't split the good wood. You just want the undesirable portion to come off the end there. And see how that did. It's not bad. You want to make sure you have the right distance, so you want to measure, I think it's 18 inches is what we gave you. So you want to measure 18 inches this way and approximately 4 inches this way to make sure the wood is all there, okay? So, again, I don't have a cut plan for this particular demonstration just because of the interest of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reserve a portion of this wood and then use this for wings. So I'm going to double the length here of this available wood, and I'm going to just mark it, and then I'm going to, gosh, I don't even have a long enough ruler, so the good thing there would be to have a nice long ruler. So I'm going to measure my wing tips. We'll say we'll make them 1.5 inches and 1.5 inches down here. And I'm going to try to line this up and use my fuselage here to nice long stick. And again, I'm doing this kind of in the interest of time, so I'm not being as precise as I should be, but I want to just demonstrate for you guys what you can do, what's available out there. So as I line this up, I'm just going to cut through the wood as gently as possible, pressing up against the ruler. What's good about this is that you'll have some kind of idea of what to do once you get in there, because otherwise, if this is your first time building, you're going to be kind of struggling. So now I've cut that way. Let me cut this portion off for the... So cutting against the grain, just going to let it take several strokes there. Let that come off and let those two pieces come off. So now I have a pretty nice wingspan there, okay? And now I need to glue it and decide how much dihedral I want to do. So what's dihedral? Should I have dihedral, and is it good for me?
Yes, you should.
Why should I have dihedral?
Makes it more stable.
In what? In what? Roll stable in what? I just kind of said it, didn't I?
And like it's roll.
In roll. It'll make it more roll stable, so dihedral. So if I need to give 5 degrees of dihedral on each wingtip, how are you going to do that? How are you going to do that? How are you going to set this up so it's perfect on 5 degrees of dihedral?
Just lay one side down and then prop the other side up to 10.
So that's a great idea. Thank you. If I have to give it dihedral, let's say I'm doing 5 degrees here and 5 degrees there, okay? Well, you have a couple options. You can build a jig. You can build a jig and raise both ends to 5 degrees. How are you going to raise both ends and know it's at 5 degrees?
Carefully.
Carefully. You're going to use SOHCAHTOA. Everybody remember that? Everybody remember that? I'm going to measure, I know this distance, and I know this distance. If I can figure out how high to raise it, I can figure out that angle. Okay? So you know the distances, you just need to figure out how high to raise it to back out the angle. That's one option. You'd have to do it for both sides. Or like Mr. Elliott said, the other option is to lay one side flat completely on the table. We know the table's pretty flat. We'll make that assumption. And I'm going to raise the other side to what?
10 degrees.
That's right. I'm going to double the angle on the other side to 10 degrees. Now, rather than having to build 2 jigs to raise the thing, I just need to build one. Okay, and I'm not sitting there measuring 10 degrees. I'm measuring the distance, and I'm going to measure how high I have to raise this thing, and I'm going to calculate the height and the angle. Okay, so you can use the ruler, set the ruler up here, raise the wing, put a weight down on there, and that's what I'm going to show you right now. Okay? So, I'm going to take a weight. This T-square is pretty heavy. And I'm just going to lay it on here. When you do gluing, you're going to do it right on the wax paper. Okay? Make sure the shiny side is up. The wax paper will help prevent the glue from sticking to the surface. And you also want to have, a good technique is to have an extra sheet of paper handy, and this is going to act like a fiberglass. Once you put the glue there, that's your adhesive, and the fibers in here will give it a slightly extra stronger bond. So, I'm going to put this T-square, you can use a pin, a straight pin, and pin that down there. Let me do something else. When you do your initial cuts, you might want to sand down these edges to make sure they are nice and clean. And even still, I'm bringing together two angled edges, so that's still not as clean as it could be. You could even sand that so that you have the tightest joint there as best possible, as best as possible. So let me see, let me do this. I'm going to put this on here, weigh that down. Now in the interest of time, again, I'm not going to measure it, but here I'm going to use these pens as my jig. I'm going to measure the distance, I'm going to measure the height, and I can calculate out the angle. So, when you use the super glue, you just want to use a little bit, all right? It's going to be plenty, and it's going to be strong. The more you use, the less effective it's going to be. So you just want to get enough in there to get it started and get the joint adhered together, the two pieces adhered. So I'm just going to make a little bead in there. Okay. I'm going to open it up a little bit and let some of that slide down inside there. Bring them together. And I'm going to take a scrap piece of paper and I'm going to spread that thin. I'm just going to spread it. Okay. Then I'm going to take my other piece of paper I'm going to use as my extra joint, and I'm going to put that down on top of there, and you need to give it about 30 seconds to really dry well and make a nice strong bond. Okay? So while that's drying, I'm going to just quickly make a tail, and for that I'm just going to make it nice and square. I'm not going to spend too much time just so I show you how to do this. On my fuselage stick, I'm going to just simply glue it to the side. Now you're going to have maybe some leading edge sweep. It may not be this tall, but what I'm trying to show you is how to take advantage of that glue surface there. So I'm just going to put some glue here on the end of the stick and put my, spread that around so it's nice and tight. Make it square, and I'm taking advantage of all that surface area on the back of the stick. Now I've created even more surface area down here, and I'm going to either glue this down here or I'm going to make it adjustable. Okay? So I'm going to do that instead. Since I have a fixed one already in the airplane I just showed you, let me just wipe this off and I'll wait for that to dry off. And then I will show you how we can make it adjustable. So either glue it or make it adjustable. Let's see how the wings are doing. Okay, just twist it there. And now I have a set of wings. There's a little bit of dihedral in there. That's good for roll stability. Okay. Assuming you cut it evenly and it's well balanced, it should be a nice set of wings there. Okay. If you want to make it adjustable, you need to take some of your fuselage stick, and if you're cutting into the fuselage stick, you just want to rock it back and forth. The blade, rock it back and forth, or there's a saw blade down there, you can kind of saw it very gently. So I'm going to give up some of my fuselage here, and again, this is completely arbitrary. In the interest of time, I just want to show you the building techniques. And you can kind of see there how I cut it a little short. I should have kept going. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mount this stick down here, this portion of the fuselage stick, and this will be my glide. This is going to be my glide. And what's this going to be? Eventually it's just going to look like the wing I showed you back here, where I have this stick mounted, glued on here, and it's going to be my glide in the channel. So that is how I get to this point. Now you have to be really careful how you glue this on here. I would keep it in a jig. I would use like a stack of quarters or something that's fixed, that's a known height. and level these wings out, and then glue this on here so that it's level when you put it in here. This channel is made with the leftover balsa wood that I have from the sheet. And if you want to make the tail adjustable, what I recommend you do is you can use a rubber band. You're going to take the rubber band over the end of the fuselage like this. You're going to take your tail here, and you're going to just tie it to the end. And now what this allows you to do is it allows you to make it adjustable. You can take a little piece of balsa wood or paper, anything that'll make a wedge, an effective wedge, and you can just slide it in there. And you can adjust the angle of incidence or the tail incidence so that it has a higher angle of incidence or a lower angle of incidence to bring the nose up or down, which eventually affects your trim velocity, where this thing is going to trim out and glide at its velocity that is most desirable, which you've calculated in your spreadsheets. Okay? Do you guys have any questions for me? When you finish your plane, you're going to have to figure out how much mass, some ballast to put on the front. I would start with probably about a quarter's worth of clay, probably no more than, say, a large marble's worth. And then once you're ready to fly, my suggestion is to probably just start down on one knee and toss it and see how it does, and see what its initial tendency is, and stand up and throw it and see what it wants to do. And then let's see how this older one does. Not too bad. Your throwing technique is probably the most critical phase of flight. There's 4 things you need to master, or at least target when you throw it. You need to throw it with zero roll. Zero roll. It can't have any roll in it when you throw it. It can't have any excessive pitch. You can't throw it at an angle with yaw. And you have to throw it at the right velocity. So the best technique I recommend, and this is hardest for my football players and my javelin throwers, don't put it back here where you can't see the thing, okay? Don't launch it from back here. Put it in front of you, put it as slightly nose down, and make sure the wings are level. And you just want to put your fingers somewhere on the center of gravity, roughly, somewhere in the middle. Find a nice spot and gently toss it, and gently toss it. And then once you do that a couple times at your height, and then go up to the balcony and try it there. All right? You guys have any questions? Sir?
If we design a plane and then we're like testing it before, before the day of throwing it.
Right.
And it's just an epic failure.
Yes.
Can we redesign and make a new one?
Can you redesign and make a new one? If you have a design that fails miserably before you actually start flying it, if you come down with a new cut plan and your old cut plan and your old plane, I will allow you to get a new sheet. But you have to prove to me that you're going in a different direction. Okay, if you built it poorly, that's one thing. If you're going in a different direction, we'll let you do that. Okay, but keep in mind that time is short. We start building Thursday and Friday. The last build day will be Monday. So if you take your cut plan and bring it to me and you want to build it over the weekend, we can give you the wood and then you can do that. And we start flying Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night at the field house. Anything else? All right, thank you very much, guys. I appreciate that.